All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, we have as our guest tonight Sergeant Steve McCarty of the Minneapolis Police Department. Hey, welcome to the Lacy Johnson podcast, Steve.
Thank you, Lacy. Glad to be here.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, sir. Pretty
Okay.
good. Can't complain. Just trying to enjoy my Saturday.
Yeah.
Waiting for
Well,
some football games.
you're Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, okay. I'm doing pretty good this Wednesday evening.
My editor gonna cut that out, I think.
I know he will. I know he will.
Uh, so, welcome to my podcast, Steve. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Doing good.
Okay. Actually, one of my tech guys here at the studio reminded me that you're also a musician, and I think you're a saxophone player. I think you got your own little jazz ensemble there.
Yeah,
How's that?
yeah. I try to play music whenever I can. It's a nice diversion, Lacy.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is that a lot of times people have these stereotypes of people in certain groups, and you start looking at them as individuals, and you find out that they got all kinds of talents and things, and they're well-rounded people. And I want my audience to know that I've known you personally. I don't know, 20 years or so,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
maybe even longer. And you're one of the uh, nicest gentlemen I know.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
Thank you, Lacy. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, very conscious and everything, and most of the police officers that I know fall into that category. And it's sad when an incident involving one or two or three or however many make the whole department look bad. But let's get into this here. Well, first of all, before we start, we're going to get into some law enforcement issues here. We'll talk a little bit about defunding the police, and and some of the law enforcement issues and crime going on here. And I'm just going to start off and let my audience know I got a personal stake in some of these things that we're talking about, and most of the issues that people talk about. Uh, during the, After the George Floyd killing and all this defund the police and vilifying the police, I want people in other communities to know. And I live in what they consider the hood. I live in the inner city. I live in a predominantly black neighborhood, and I want people out there to know that this whole defund the police and vilifying the police really, really, really impacted the black community in a negative way. And from a personal standpoint, I want people to know that, I mean, the violence was just out of control. No wonder was, well, I shouldn't put it that way because I shouldn't disparage the whole community. We had too many people disrespecting traffic laws and things like that. It's just a bunch of lawlessness. I, I can't count the number of times I'm sitting at a red light and the car behind me just zoom on through it. Uh, I can't count the number of times. The same thing, stop signs and things. So it's a lot of things going on there. Uh, the son of my neighbor across the alley was murdered during this crime spree that I traced directly back to the decision that let people destroy the precinct.
Hmm.
My son and my neighbor was murdered,
Mm.
and that was sad. Uh, I think at one time there was, I think several three-year olds were shot, and a couple of them died. At least two of them, because I know one was the granddaughter of someone I knew. One was the daughter of a schoolmate of my
Mm.
youngest son. So these things were personal to me.
Right.
Uh, yeah, burglar
Yeah.
alarm goes off at my office. Uh, Law enforcement police officers show up, and we start talking. Let's cut that one. Actually, because we don't have to cut that part out because I'm remembering that wrong. Okay, now let's go. Uh, the burglar alarm goes off in my office, and no policemen show up as it was designed to. And when I talk to some of the friends and people I know in the police department, they're like, "We no longer do that." And so that has an immediate impact on the neighborhood. Uh, some of my friends have police scanners, and they were privy to conversation where someone had stolen a car, and this is the type of conversation they were privy to. Someone stole a car, had a gun in the car. Police decided we're not going to chase him. And from my standpoint, and I kind of understand it. I mean, it's tough out there being a policeman nowadays, officer, because I want to be politically correct, at least try. Um, Out there who, they can end up 10, 15 years in prison. And so right now they're just, staying out of, a lot of times they're just not responding to situations like that. Um, that's I've heard about a game of chicken being played by people in the community, being played with the police officer, where people are driving real fast towards a police car and stop just short of it and laughing at it. Just a total disrespect for law and order has come up. Now it's gotten a little better recently, but people don't understand that there was almost lawlessness in our community over here. And finally, though, probably the most crucial part, and it was all over the news, where some people were being chased by police. And my wife is coming to pick me up from work at my office, and as soon as she turned the corner, one of the cars that were being chased by the police turned the corner right behind her. And long story short, there, my wife, I think, was within a feet or two of having her car taken out and perhaps her taken out. And this is all going on while I don't know why the news media wasn't reporting on it, while everybody else is still clamoring for defunding the police. And I guess one more thing, they destroyed businesses in our community. And for a while there, I had no place. Grocery stores in the community was destroyed. Banks were destroyed. Gas stations. And so anytime I want to even finding a cup of coffee, if I
Hmm.
ran out of a cup of coffee, I got to drive 20 miles. Well, actually, I don't know how long St. Louis Park is from here, 10, 15 miles just to get some coffee or anything in his
Hmm.
neighborhood. So they really did a job
Hmm.
on our community with this defund the police, vilifying the cops. And I don't think anyone has ever given it proper recognition. And you don't have to take that into consideration in your answers here. But let's get started, Steve. Sorry about that long
Oh no,
soliloquy, but I
no, that's
wanted people to know that
very
this is personal for me. Go
yes.
ahead.
I understand. I understand completely. No, that was good.
Yeah. So let's start with your career in law enforcement. What made you do it, Steve?
Well, Lacey, my father was a correctional officer at the Ramsey County Workhouse, and obviously, I was directly impacted by my mom and dad. So, I saw what he did for a living. That he joined them shortly after getting out of the Air Force, and I also had a cousin that worked for the St. Paul Police Department.
Mhm.
So during my formative years, I saw my father and my uncle. And when I grew up, I'm from St. Paul. So when I grew up over here, I mean, the police were always around. I was never afraid of the police, and it just kind of seemed like something that would be a good career for me. I knew it was going to be stable. It and I wanted to help people. I wanted to be in a situation as I got older. I wanted to be in a situation where I could help people. Obviously being black and growing up around here, there aren't a lot of black police officers. So, there was always a sentiment that, we should try to do more to help our community. And it just seemed kind of like a natural fit for me.
Okay. Well, how has it turned out? You have any regrets or anything? Because it's a tough field, man.
Yeah, well, I'm in my 31st year now. And, I mean, there were some sacrifices. I mean, I've been married, divorced. You could maybe attribute some of that police work to some of my relationship problems. Uh, I would say that that's probably the biggest detriment.
Mhm.
But as far as regrets go, other than that, it's been a pretty good job. I mean, it's not like a job at U.S. Bank or Wells Fargo. You're going to sacrifice. It's gonna definitely change you. And
Right.
those of us that are in it, most of us know that you're not going to be the same person after a 20, 30-year career.
Right.
But it's a sacrifice. Sometimes you got to sacrifice things for the greater good, and that's what
Doug,
I think I
okay.
did.
Do you remember? And if I can understand it, and I should explain to my audience. We don't go over the questions here. Do you remember a particular incident where it was just really tough for you, where it was just hard on you when you got home after your shift?
You know, it, I got not a particular one, but I mean, there are some causes that are more difficult than others. Kid, children, kids involving children that are hurt or killed. I was a North Side cop for my first 10 years, and I remember now that I think about it, a kid got shot and killed on Golden Valley Road, right off of I think it was Morgan, Newton, somewhere on the would have been the south side of Golden Valley Road between Morgan and Newton, somewhere in there. And that was pretty bad. The kid was probably like 10 years old and just got, I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was, I mean, he wasn't an intended target, but it was there was a lot of gunfire back in the 90s.
Well,
That's some of our homicide rates were the highest. They talk about crime now, but in the 90s, it was there were more assaults and more homicides back in the 90s in Minneapolis than there are now, believe it or not.
oh yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I was telling someone last night. I came here to go to college in the '70s,
Hmm.
and homicides was almost unheard of. And I tell people, I even remember the first time I heard of a homicide in Minneapolis. It was at a lounge called the Blue Note, and I
Okay.
just remember it. It stood out that off much to me because we hardly ever had murders and homicides here in the Twin Cities,
Hmm.
and that changed a lot. You remember the name is it was called Murderapolis,
Yes.
and
Right.
so you were out there during that time
Oh
also.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was 96 or 97 when they called it Murderapolis. Yeah. When we had record homicide rates, and I was working nights in the fourth precinct.
And you mentioned Golden Valley Road. Golden Valley Road, that's where I think his name is Hill, the young Minneapolis football player, was recently killed. And
Oh
right
yeah.
now they have a documentary series going on Showtime Plus. I'm quite sure you're familiar with it. Have you
Yeah.
had a chance to watch any of that documentary?
I saw the first episode. And it was very good. I have a coworker that's in it. Well, two coworkers. Inspector Charlie Adams is featured in it, along with and Inspector Charlie Adams is the commander of the fourth precinct, and Officer Ricky Plunkett is also in it, and he's an officer downtown at the first precinct where I work.
Okay, I understand the football coach at North, and he's featured in the documentary.
Yes.
Used to be a police officer, also, right?
Yep, that's Charlie Adams, the inspector's son. Yep, and
Right.
that's
Okay.
I think he's Charlie Adams the third.
Oh,
Is
the
the
third. Okay, Charlie.
Yeah,
Okay, got you. Got you. Got
right.
you.
The inspector's the second. Yeah, but yes, the head coach Charlie Adams the third
Oh, okay.
was a Minneapolis police officer for a couple years.
Right. So let's dive into some police issues here. Um, I probably shared with you in some of our previous conversations that I attended a forum of law enforcement officers and young black teenagers of the community. I think mostly males, 95%. And we had a good exchange, a good dialogue. And I probably shared with you, I came away from that town hall forum with two main concerns, one with the police and one with just our community and responsibility and accountability. The issue I had with the police, I guess, is that they really stress, and I want our audience to know that most of these police officers were minorities, mostly black, and every one of them were sincere and concerned about the unarmed killings of black people. And to a person, they stressed that when you're dealing with the police in an arrest situation, that it's very important that they see both of your hands at the same time. And as soon as they said it, I think I'm somewhat analytical. It made sense to me. But my next reaction was, wait a minute, why did not I not ever hear anybody say this before? I mean, I never thought of it. Oh yeah, that's right. It makes sense. Well, where I'm getting to, I'm like, why isn't there not a nationwide public relations campaign to let people in those situations understand the importance of the police officers seeing both of of your hands at the same time? So I guess why I have you on my podcast, Sergeant McCarty. Why are not why are there not more communications with the community of the importance of seeing both of their hands at the same time?
Well, that's a good
At all
question.
times, I should say.
And
Same time at all times.
I'm sorry, say that again, Lacy.
Why is there not more communication with the community
Yeah, I heard
uh,
that.
to let them know we need to see both of your hands
Yeah,
at all times?
I guess I don't know why there isn't more communication about it, because I mean that's what they, when I went to the academy 31, almost 32 years ago, they used to stress, I mean, it's not a look that's going to kill you. It's not the feet that are going to typically kill you. It's going to be the hands. So you want to see hands. I always want to see hands. And why that's not getting out in a public service announcement, a PSA to the greater community, I don't know. But it seems pretty obvious to me because, I mean, well, that's the way I was trained. You always want to see people's hands, because
Right,
it's hands that are going to kill you or
right.
hurt you. I don't know.
Okay. One of the things I've been blessed with is just about every issue out there. I know people on all sides of the issues, and with crime and unarmed killings, I know people in the community. I know police officers. I know just about everybody, every stakeholder in the community.
Hmm.
And where I'm getting at, and just to give you guys put things in context from a police standpoint, some of these criminals I know, they're very dangerous people. I know I'm preaching to the crowd here. I mean, uh, and they talk to me, and I've had people say things like to me, "Well, Lacy, I actually killed 5 people, but I was only convicted of one."
Wow.
And they're telling me, and their psychology when they're out there, and a lot of them are doing some things in there. So, so there's a lot of criminality out there, and I'm assuming that you, as a police officer, you see this too. That some of these people, they are not nice people. Uh,
Yeah,
give me your input on that. You got guys are dealing with some very dangerous people often, right?
yeah,
Especially
there
in
are
the
a
world.
lot of dangerous people out there, and whether it's because of the opportunity that exists, or mental health reasons, or a combination of those plus other factors. But the police are just one aspect of this criminal justice system. We can arrest people all the time. However, if they're not being charged, whether it's in city court or county court for felonies, if they're just letting people go, or just slap on the wrist, if you will, then it's just going to put people back out there. There's no accountability.
Right.
So
So when
that's
representative
a problem.
of law enforcement point this out to leadership, what's the response?
That's somebody who is a higher grade than me that would point it out. I mean, we talk
Mhm.
about it all the time at my level, but it's up to the chief and the assistant chiefs, the deputy chiefs to bring this out. And I mean, you see it in the news where
Right.
people are. They talk about it in the news where people are arrested countless times, whether it's for a gun or carjackings or whatever, and the courts let them out, or the sentence is light, and I mean, I have a couple theories on why that happens, uh, but that's a major part of the problem.
Well, you can't mention a couple of theories of why it happened and not share it with us. Give me your theories, Sergeant McCarty.
Well, I think a lot of times, in certain communities or certain cities, and I won't speak of Minneapolis specifically, but I think a lot of times they swing the pendulum in the opposite direction to make up for uh, things that were done wrong in the past. Like if a
Right.
group of people are, you know, wrongly charged with crimes and subsequently convicted with crimes if we have a history of that, then, I think a lot of times in certain communities, they want to swing the pendulum back to make up for those misdeeds that were done.
Right.
And
Well,
maybe some of that is what we're seeing
right.
in these communities.
Well,
Does
I
that,
tell people, uh, our parents didn't care about all that. And they would never have bailed me out of jail, even if they could afford it. Because I was raised to think things through before you do them and be responsible and accountable. What I'm saying is that I can imagine me ending up in jail and call mom and dad and say, Mom and Dad, I'm in jail. Can you come bail me out? I know, even if they could, their response would be, you should have thought about that before you did it. You should have thought about the fact you
right.
don't have any bail money. And so don't be
But
calling us bail. And that's the way I was raised.
yeah,
Nowadays, it's totally different. Yeah.
and
I
I
mean,
understand that. Well,
yeah.
I was raised objectively and to look at things from all sides. So I can thank my dad for that,
Hmm.
But, there's a long history of people not being treated fairly by the criminal justice system. We know this, right?
Right.
So, that's not anybody who uh, reads or knows history knows that everybody hasn't been treated fair under the criminal justice system. Things have gotten better. Are they perfect? No, but things uh, have gotten better, in my opinion. But it's, I'll say that just because if you're doing wrong, it doesn't matter who you are. Wrong is wrong, regardless as to who you are.
Right. Right.
If people just as long as everybody's being treated fairly, all groups of people are being treated fairly, then that nobody should have anything to complain about. But that's the problem. Are all groups being treated fairly? Does
Well,
that make sense?
yeah, it does. It does. But my reply to that, so people out there can understand, uh, when I brought up fairness to my dad, he's like, I don't want to hear about that for whether we're fair or not, son. Fair is a place where they judge pigs. So I don't want to hear it. So he didn't want, he's saying, and basically, I grew up in a different environment and what they
Yeah.
would probably even consider chauvinistic, but he was like, we as men, we can't worry about whether or not things are fair. We need to go out there and get things done, whether they're fair or not. It's
Yeah.
kind of like anyone who's played sports. Uh, I never worried about referees cheating. I never worried about the other team cheating, whether it was fair or not. I just prepared myself the
Yeah.
best
Well,
I could to do. In fact,
I'm not saying that you should be stuck and waiting for it to be fair.
right.
Of course. I mean, I
I know
my
you're not saying that. Yep, yep,
very some my background's probably very similar to yours. Where you had to work hard.
right.
You just had to transcend whatever obstacles got in your way. And
Exactly.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know exactly.
And it makes us stronger as a people. You
Right.
know, so I know what you're saying. I know what
Yeah.
you're saying. But
But a lot of the reason I brought it up, a lot of people within our community and outside our community look at unfairness as an excuse
yes,
for
I I
doing all kinds of things. And just because you're hurt and painful and things have happened to you in the past, that is never a reason to go destroy someone else's property or burn
I
things down. And
I,
and I'm
I
saying I know you don't think that, but there's too many people in our society who
yeah.
thinks that.
Who
And,
think that?
and
Right.
right,
Yep. Yeah, and
it,
then you get certain politicians and stuff that capitalize on that, and they want to help these people for reasons, for whether it's votes, and not to get too much off track here, but they want to keep these people subservient to them, to keep them voting for them, or keep them you know under their thumb. So
right.
I agree completely with you. I agree, but it takes a strong person. That's why I thank God for my background with my family, my background with religion, my fraternity. That kept me
Mhm.
strong, kept me focused to realize that although it might be tough, you gotta just hang in there.
Yeah. And I guess the bottom line, and we will move on here, according to my upbringing, if you're healthy mentally and physically, you can be whatever you want to be. And
Hmm.
there's no excuse for
Yeah.
going out committing crimes and taking other people's property and things like that. But we've got to the point where a lot of people feel like it. In fact, probably one of the most disheartening things happened during this whole protest to George Floyd is I heard a young black lady uh, make the statement that looting is a form of reparations. And I mean, that hurt my heart, man. I mean, what
Yeah.
has got, how does that get into someone's head?
Yeah. I don't know.
Because of what happened, I don't know, 400 years ago or whatever, that gives me the right and moral authority to go in and take other people's property and burn
Yeah.
other people's property down.
Yeah.
And
That's
uh,
crazy.
yeah, what concerns me is that attitude is out there a lot,
Yeah.
not only among our young people, but a lot of our older people.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's why, I mean, everybody doesn't have the upbringing that you had. Everybody doesn't have the upbringing that I had. A lot of people had to struggle, and they didn't have, you know, uh, and I'll say father figures because fathers are very important.
oh yeah.
A strong father figure. So how do you break that cycle with these families? These people that think like that, because I think it's not the race of the person; it's how they were brought up.
I agree with that. Well, I'm concerned that we won't break that cycle because no one is talking about it. Well, people are talking about it, but very few people are talking about it. And it's almost politically incorrect to suggest the importance of a two-parent family,
Hmm.
suggest the importance of a male in a household, suggest the importance, especially from an economic point, of having two parents bringing in incomes, and especially from me as a black male growing up, my dad was very important. I can imagine my dad not being there. I mean, uh, and I tell you, the culture that we're in, there's so much temptation to do wrong that even with two parents and all the things that I had going for me in my childhood, you can easily get off track. And I tell people that God and family is what keeps you on track. It's your lighthouse. It's your moral compass. And that's the only thing that saved me, even with everything that I had going for me. People
Yeah.
don't
Right.
understand how challenging it is to stay out of trouble. And I'm just gonna be for real as a young black male. It's just challenging. It's in fact, I had one of my young workers who was murdered and trying to straighten his life out.
Hmm.
And I told people in our community, even if you're a good kid and
Hmm.
trying to do your best, there's just danger, temptation, and all kinds of stuff all around you every day. And from a law enforcement perspective and a crime perspective, I just can't see breaking that cycle uh, without putting the family back together.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Right.
yeah, yeah. But my concern is nobody's talking about it like that.
Yeah.
They're throwing money at all these programs. They got Big Brother, Big Sister, all kinds of
Yeah.
programs, especially for these young black males. It's not going to work, people. It's
Yeah.
not going to work.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And
I'm
it's
sorry.
worse now than it was when you and I were young. Because
Yeah,
there's so much out there with the internet and all that stuff, and there's so
I,
many other things to distract you from doing what you're supposed to do.
well, that's a good point that you make because I tell people in a lot of cases, media and the internet are raising our children. Number one. Number two, when I grew up with two parents and a strong family structure, they didn't care what we saw on TV. They didn't care what. In other words, the people closest to us are the people that influenced us and disciplined us. And when I was growing up, there's a lot of violence and westerns and stuff and things like that. Uh, Regardless of that, I better not come home and do anything uh, bad or illegal
Right.
because I saw a western or anything like that. But nowadays, if you don't have a strong family, you're going to get raised by the
Oh yeah.
internet. You're going to
Or
get raised by the public schools and
you,
everything else, except for parents who really care about you and love you. So that's a very good point that you make there.
you, the streets,
Oh yeah, the streets.
you'll
Yeah.
get by them.
Well,
Yeah.
I was on. Uh, I used to work downtown Minneapolis, and there was a lot of concerns about the danger and violence down there.
Hmm.
And one of the companies that I worked for had a lunchtime forum. And what a lot of people don't out there do not understand, but I do, some of the children from these tough communities doing dysfunctional things. They're just representing the culture that they're in and trying to fit in. And when I
Right.
look back on it, that's what I did.
Yeah.
uh, just trying to fit into the culture. And so I told them, these young people are no different than the people out in these quiet suburban neighborhoods. They're trying to fit in. It just so happened the things that they have to do to fit in is kind of different than the things your kids out in the suburbs have to do to
Yeah.
fit in. And that's reflective of it. In fact, I used to see them out there smoking pot and weed
Oh,
or whatever
yeah.
out the parking. I'd always go out and tell them to stop.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised they were thankful for that. Uh, One thing I've let people know is that you and I have talked about after the George Floyd thing happened, and you always get different perspective. I always try to get different perspective before I make up my mind. And I came to you, and because and just one of the stories we talked about, because at that time, Police Union Chief Kroll was just the biggest villain, and they were going to his house and burning pinatas, and I think this is what they're called. His wife, I think, lost her job, her career, because he was villainized so much in the
Mm,
media. And when
yeah.
you and I talked, because I asked you about, I went through some issues with you that I was seeing in the news, and when you and I talked, you told me a story about uh, police union chief Kroll that I thought very interesting, and that was different from the stories out there. You mind sharing that story with our audience, Steve?
No, no, I don't mind. I think the story that we did talk about was Lieutenant Bob Kroll. He was the Minneapolis Police Federation's president at the time. And it was after Jamar Clark was killed on uh, Plymouth Avenue. And they stormed the fourth precinct, right down the street from the fourth precinct. And officers were detailed to stand around the precinct because they were literally trying to deface the police building there and get into the building. Well, they had set up these people, protesters, had blocked Plymouth Avenue right in front of the station. So there were a group of officers that were out there, monitoring the crowd. And one of the officers was a younger officer, newer officer, black kid, was out there. And there were a mixed group of protesters. Well, one of the protesters, or a couple of the protesters, started calling him all kinds of names, calling him an Uncle Tom. These were black people calling him an Uncle Tom, sellout, the typical stuff that sometimes we hear. Officer stood his ground, and the event ended. I think they eventually ended up moving these people away from Plymouth Avenue. Got a call from Bob Kroll about this officer and his experiences that I just described. And Kroll went on to say that the kid was thinking about quitting, and asked me if I would talk to him, and tell him about, some of my experiences on the police department, and try to save this young man from throwing away his career. So I met with him. He told me what happened. I told him, some of the, that's just a short time period and things will get better. And he's still with us today.
No,
So
that's
Kroll
not.
pointed out this young black officer that was going to retire. Kroll saw that he was worth saving, and just needed to talk to somebody who had some experience of working for the police department for a couple decades.
That's a great story. Actually, so he's still with the police department. I find it ironic that the protesters who were protesting uh, supposedly for black people would do that to an officer. And one of the problems is that we are being, I think, trained, indoctrinated, even brainwashed to look at people as a representative of a group. Look at all police officers as the same. Look at all people that disagree with us as the same. Look at, and it's kind of sad that that's where we are. In fact, I just did a commentary on Martin Luther King's birthday, and I'm a big believer in judging people by the content of their character. And I tell everyone, my life experience has been regardless of who you're talking to or working with or dealing with, they tend to treat you like you treat them. 99% of the people I've met, maybe higher, 99.9% of the people I've met in life uh, tend to respect me because I respect them. Uh, I don't have this expectation that everybody like me and everybody love me. In fact, I assume and have the expectation that some people are gonna hate me, but I accept the fact that look, you're free to hate me, just like you're free to love me for whatever reason. And where I draw the line, Steve, I tell people is that as long as you're not breaking the law and you have a right to do what you're saying or doing, I don't have a problem with you because that's the best of democracy.
Hmm.
That people are free to do what they want to do, say what they want to say, as long as it's not illegal. And
Free.
that's my thing. And as long as you're not too disrespectful of me as a person, now there's a line you can cross there. But
Hmm.
things like your opinions and what you think of me and what you think of my race or whatever, my group, you're free to think whatever you want.
Yes.
So it's great. In fact, I was telling you, I had a business card, I think, of the new public service safety commissioner for the city of Minneapolis. And I like what I saw on this card. It said, be constitutional, be respectful, be legal. And I think if we adapted that creed as a country, as citizen in this country, a lot of the issues that we're seeing with law enforcement would go away. Not that, like you say, law enforcement is only a small part of the criminal justice system, and there are issues there. And I've talked to legal people and lawyers and scholars and people about that, and that's a whole separate issue about what you're the lane that you're swimming in. So, Steve, give me a when we look at the whole issue of unarmed killings, how do you? What's your some of your ideas of how we reduce that? After you answer that, I'm gonna chime in with a little bit of a question or whatever. But give me some of your ideas as far as what can we do to reduce that, if anything.
Well, with these unarmed killings, and I personally don't think that there's a lot of unarmed killings throughout the country, or specifically here in Minneapolis. But the ones that we do have are certainly unfortunate, and we obviously don't want a lot of them, but or any of them unjustified. Just because you're unarmed doesn't mean that you're not a threat or can't, you know, kill somebody. But we talked about the seeing of hands, that sort of thing. The public safety awareness, where people, are encouraged to cooperate with the police. But there's a lot of mental health issues out there, or a lot of drugs and alcohol issues that prevent people from thinking in their right mind.
Right.
That's one aspect of it. We and let's face it. I mean, there's you know biases. Maybe you could have biases against a certain group of people, black people, where you might see them more as some officers might see them more as a threat. We have that aspect of it. There's training that needs to be done, additional training. I mean, we do train on implicit and explicit bias. So it's a work in progress. It's really
Right.
a work in progress. I think I mentioned to you before. I mean, I'd like to see more black police officers. You know, to go into these communities and help police them.
Right.
Everybody says that there's a problem. These police are not treating us right. Well, I think if we have a more diverse police departments, that will help in a lot of, not completely, but it will definitely help.
Right. Well,
Those off
go
the
ahead.
top.
Yeah, and I suggest everybody take responsibility. I think it starts with the leadership. I think it starts with the law enforcement agency. But I think we as a community need to accept some responsibility and accountability. And I tell everyone from personal experience, I raised two sons uh, in the inner city, two young black males in the inner city. I live here myself. I've had to deal with some profiling But I raised them like I was raised. First and foremost, obey the law. If the law is unfair or unjust, let's fight to change the law. Second of all, don't resist arrest. And third of all, like what you said, let them make sure they see both of your hands at the same time. And I haven't done any numerical analysis of anything about it, but I would suggest that most of those incidents, 9 out of 10 of them would have never occurred if we took that responsibility about obeying the law and things like that. And a lot of people, of course, don't agree with it because there are certain people out there just want to blame you guys. And if you just change, this issue is going to go away. And the reason I'm saying that, even though it may be unpopular, what I tell my friends, as long as you're just waiting for the police to change, think the issue is going to go away. And I put it like this: black men are going to still be getting killed unnecessarily. And I taught my children, look, do these things, and if something is wrong, you live to fight another day. Let's fight them in court. Let's fight them somewhere else. Let's fight them publicity wise, but don't be getting yourself killed out there,
Mhm.
because that's undoable. You can't take that back.
Yeah.
Okay, so uh, policemen, police officers have a negative image in many of these inner city communities. What would you say to people in these communities who are concerned about encounters with the police, who want to know? And you mentioned some solutions. So, what would you say to, let's say, kid living in one of the tougher neighborhoods in Minneapolis, and everything he's being told, uh, paint a police officer as evil, and his parents and other relatives feel the same way, friends feel the same way. What would you say to them to put their reaction to a law enforcement officer in perspective and let them think about other things, where it's not just all the police and things like that?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's just painting everybody with the same brush. Just because police officer wears a uniform, you see a uniform, you think that they're all the same. And I'm glad you brought that up because after this, Derek Chauvin, George Floyd situation, a lot of my coworkers had a taste of what it's like. White coworkers had a taste of what it's like to be painted with a broad brush. We were all Derek Chauvin. You know,
Right,
they thought
right,
we were all killers.
right,
So getting back to your example, kid from the inner city, a kid from the city, uh, just try to get to know people for who the individual is themselves. Just because they wear a uniform doesn't mean that they're out to kill black people or kill anybody. You got to get to know people.
right. Well, and like I say, I know people on the police force, and I know people in the community, so I understand both sides. I think we need to come together, but there's just seemed to be uh, a natural inertia for us to fight each other and look at each other as enemies instead of coming together and listen to all sides. I mentioned to people the difficult for me with political leaders and communities solving issues. Uh, I have a background of using problem solving methodology where you take the emotions and stuff out and you go out and do your research. I mentioned this to you, we talked about this after the George Floyd killing. The first thing I did was I went out and looked up some data. And I mentioned to you, and I don't know whether it's still out there, and it's by the city of Minneapolis. And this is within a day or two of it happening, because that's just my natural tendency to try to get as much information and data and facts as possible before I draw a conclusion. But one thing it showed, and you mentioned it earlier, between 2008 and 2019, I think there was like 4 million encounters between the Minneapolis police officers and the citizen, and out of that 4 million encounters, there was 11 killings. And I tell people, and I understand people, they don't want to hear no data, facts, and statistics and things like that when they are emotional and they're suffering pain and hurt and the feeling that they are victims. I understand that, but when I did the math, I think I came out to 0.0001% 0.012% or some ridiculous number like that. And I'm like you, from an engineering standpoint perspective, we don't expect 100% hardly ever.
Hmm.
In fact, until recently, the best we are counting on is 99.99%. So that's going to be some issues. I know that as long as last I heard, we had over 700,000 police officers in this country, probably gone down since then, and they all got guns. I'm assuming most have guns. Somebody going to eventually accidentally uh, be killed.
Hmm.
And I come from the standpoint of, even if you got a gun in the house, there's a chance, and you just by yourself, there's a chance that somebody's going to end up killed. And where I'm going with that is that how much of a problem it really is, and just using a methodology to try to solve these problems. Another thing I found out, and I want to know, how many white people unarmed white people, citizens, are getting killed. And I was surprised to find out that twice as many of them are getting killed than us black people getting
Is
killed.
that right? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
and this was like a couple of years ago, so it might have changed. But when
Yeah.
I looked at the data, just about every year, twice as many white citizens, unarmed white citizens, if the data correct, was getting killed. And the point I'm trying to make to people out there, there's a way, I think, that you go about solving problems, especially complex problems. And it got to be a methodology that takes the emotion out of it, that does the analysis, that respect data and facts and figures. If you don't do that, life experience has shown me, nine times, well, you'll be lucky to solve the problem. And I've told you before, and people before, look, I work with some of the smartest, hardworking, experienced people in the world, at least in the computer industry. And lessons have taught us, time has taught us, that really doesn't matter when you're trying to get things right. That's a system and a process that you have to go through that we're not going through. I guess that's my soapbox speech on that one. Anything else, Steve, you have to relay on to my audience? Because once again, they don't often hear from actual police officers or people in law enforcement on how we solve this problem
You
together.
know, just to recap a couple things. Yes, you talked about these unarmed killing or police killings, and how when you looked at the data, it showed that what over half of them were white people getting killed by the police.
Twice as many
Twice as
white people
why
killed.
don't I care about that? They don't put that on the news. I mean,
Uh,
it's more newsworthy to these news outlets to have some white police officer kill some black person. That's that's what we hear about. They should, if they're going to report it, they should report fairly. But the news, they want to shock people and get people all worked up and everything. And what's going to get people worked up is when there's controversies with the races, or controversies with the police department and minority races, etc. It's poor reporting on the media's part that they don't mention that. The
well,
second point I wanted to
mhm,
make. Oh,
mhm.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Second point, you talked about, kids in the neighborhood, these neighborhoods, afraid of the police. I wish I had a nickel for every time uh, I was either in a store or went into a house or something on a car or whatever, and some parent, black or white, tell their little kid, if you're not good, I'm going to have him take you to jail. So that, and then, the kids start crying and stuff. And, can you imagine a kid hearing that over and over again at a formative age? How they would be afraid of the police when you have these parents and adults telling them that. And then you couple that with, they might see, the police come and arrest their father or their mother's boyfriend on a domestic assault. And then they're hearing this, I'm going to have the police arrest you.
Yeah,
That doesn't do us any favors either. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. You remind me, and I got a lot of these stories to tell, and a lot of times we don't solve these issues, but we don't understand the mental or cultural aspects of it. I was coaching my son I was attending my son practice at the park. I don't know, he was about 8 or 9 years old at the time, playing football.
Hmm.
And I had 3 young black kids run up to me, 2 females and 1 male, and their thing was they were arguing about it. Like, don't everybody have a record? In their mind, everybody done been to jail.
Yeah.
Have a record. I mean, it's just, and to me, it was just sad.
Very
This
sad.
is what's in our
Yeah.
children. They've just accepted it,
Yeah.
and it reminds me too of my barber shop. I'm just amazed sitting around because you know how barbershops are,
Oh yeah.
listening to these young dudes talk, and just about every one of them been to jail, and it's like a cultural thing. It's like a celebration.
Yeah.
I did some prison ministry,
Yeah.
and I think it was Rush City. I went into the prison correctional facility, and it was nice. I mean, nobody wants to be behind jail,
Hmm.
but it was a nice facility. It had uh, cable TV.
Yeah.
They got 3 meals a day. In fact, what I noticed on the cable TV that they had, and we all know BET, and we all know how the hip hop videos are. I mean, I was just shocked at the videos they were watching
Yeah.
in prison,
Right.
and knowing some of our children, uh, it's better to be behind. Almost better be. They have a better life behind bars than they have
Yeah.
outside.
Very,
And
very,
so all
very,
those
very
things
sad.
we have to take into consideration. Plus, you got a hip hop industry now that's basically telling us to kill each other. That's basically telling us to disrespect our women and things like that. And so it's pumping all that into us.
Yep.
And you'll be amazed. And another sad thing is, I run into a lot of people, a lot of young men who their life is such that it's almost like they don't care about dying, man. And that's what has happened to our neighborhood. And until we start getting into, for lack of a better word, the psychic or the culture of what's going on, we're not going to solve these issues. We can throw all the money at it that we want. We aren't going to solve it. So
No.
this has been great little not a little interview. Edit that out. This has been a great interview, Steve,
Yes.
and I really appreciate it. Hopefully, someday down the road, we'll check in with you again as new things and questions and issues come up in my mind that involve police officer. I keep you in mind. I know you've been there for a while. You're probably retiring pretty soon, aren't you?
I hope sometime this year, Lacey. I
Ooh,
said sometime this year. Yeah.
okay, glad to hear that. Okay, well, thanks again, Steve. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day because I know you're very busy to spend time with us and our audience.
Yeah. Well,
And
thank you.
so, have a great day, have a
Thank.
great career, and hope to see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.